Hi everyone, I'm Rajarajeshwari, a chartered accountant, cost accountant, and a company secretary. And we will be continuing with the topic management and administration. In that, in today's topic, we will be learning about voting, what is postal ballot, and how resolutions are passed, how it is filed, and in details the procedure and the provisions of the Companies Act. So when I say a company is passing a resolution, it can be consented in favor of the resolution or against the resolution. So how do the members consent? They can pass the resolution by voting. So whatever there is a resolution has to be passed, voting by the members will be done. There are various methods of taking the vote. One is by show of hands. Like this, the members show their hands, and using that they will count if it is a simple thing. Or they can go by electronic means, or they can ask for a poll and then they can take the poll and then count the votes. Or some transactions should be done only by postal ballot. So we will be learning in detail first how voting process is done in any company. So first, we should know what are all the restrictions. When I say restrictions, the articles of association can specify any restrictions if it wants. So the articles may provide a member cannot exercise the voting right if any amount is due from a member in respect of calls, share application money, share allotment, first call, second call. So some amount is due from him, so that member cannot vote. So that it can say, or any other sum payable to the company. The person has not yet paid, then that member cannot vote. Or the company would have exercised the right of lien. So those members cannot exercise the voting right, and also they cannot requisition an EGM also. So the company can prohibit a person, a member on these grounds. Other than these grounds, it cannot prohibit. And also when the articles is silent, the articles do not contain any provision, then also a member cannot be prevented from voting. So we will just learn this section 106. The article may provide. See, the may provide, it is an optional. It is not compulsory. The articles of association may provide that no member shall exercise any voting right in respect of any share registered in his name on which any amount due and payable from him on calls or other sum payable, or the company has exercised the right of lien. Such member cannot sign a requisition slip for an EGM, because we learned that members can also conduct an EGM. They can sign the requisition slip when they want an EGM to be conducted. They themselves can requisition. So company shall not prohibit any member except on the grounds mentioned above. Where the articles of the company do not contain any provision restricting the exercise of voting right of members, then a member cannot be prevented from voting, even though calls or sums payable may not have been paid, the company would have exercised the lien. But if the articles is silent, then the member cannot be restricted. So that is the point which is specified in section 106. Now we were talking about voting by show of hands by the person who's present there. So in the first instance, voting shall be done by way of show of hands in the first instance, unless Suppose a voting is demanded by way of poll, otherwise normally the company generally get the voting done by only show of hands. Or if the voting is demanded by way of poll or electronic means, then declaration by the chairman of the passing of the resolution will have effect and that will be recorded. Even in the show of hands itself, if you pass a resolution, if a company passes a resolution, that is effective and that can be written in the minutes or recorded in the minutes. Suppose the company demands poll or electronic means, then the chairman should have to take it up and should have to act accordingly. So unless the voting is demanded by way of poll or by electronic means, voting shall be done by show of hands in the first instance. So either way you can read this and you can understand this. So first instance it can be done by show of hands. Now when voting is done by electronic means, in certain cases if it is a listed company, two conditions have to be satisfied. One is a listed company or and it is a listed company and not less than 1000 members are there. Suppose it is 1500, 2000, if it is a listed company, then definitely it should be done by electronic means. Voting should be done by electronic means. The exemption is granted to Nidhi company. Nidhi company is a company which fosters for the financial needs for the members of the company. So it is called as a classified as a separate Nidhi company classification. That company is exempted and also an institutional investor referred in SEBI regulations. They are also exempted. So company is required to provide its members the facility of exercising right to vote by electronic means has been mentioned in subsection 2 of Rule 20. Every company which has listed its equity shares on a recognized stock exchange and has not less than 1000 members should have to do the voting through electronic means. Of course, exempted entity, Nidhi company and institutional investor referred in SEBI regulations 2009. There it is exempted. Then, what is the procedure for that? Notice of the meeting. See, the notice should be sent to all members, directors, auditors. We know that who are all the persons who are entitled for the notice, entitled to receive notice. So for them, you should have to send the notice. Then you should also specify what is the manner of e-voting, what is the login ID and password, cutoff date, then remote e-voting period. Then once voting done, you cannot change it. That also it should have to be mentioned. And advertisement should be published in a newspaper at least 5 days before the meeting in one vernacular newspaper and one English newspaper. As we know that vernacular newspaper is a local language, local newspaper that is circulating in the state and one English newspaper. In regional language and in English language, advertisement should have to be given. And remote e-voting period is opened 3 days before meeting and it remains open for minimum 3 days. It was open. And when you are doing an e-voting, it closes. If today is the meeting, the previous day 5 p.m. it will be closed. It closes at 5 p.m. on day preceding the meeting. So their physical meeting will be held and people can cast their vote physically. So that is the logic. So if I have AGM on 1/9/2026, then on 31st August at 5 p.m., this e-voting will be closed. On day preceding the meeting, it will be closed. Cut-off date, they will specify who are all the persons who are eligible to e-vote. So for that, they specify a date, that is the cut-off date. That will also be specified. Physical voting is allowed for those who have not cast their votes in e-voting. They can come physically and they can cast their vote. So voting is also allowed at a meeting. So those who did not e-vote, then they can vote it physically also. Then unblocking of votes. And before that, you appoint a scrutinizer for that. Who's a scrutinizer? A person of good command over the subject and who could be a chartered accountant, cost accountant, or a company secretary or an advocate and a reputed person and who will conduct the process fairly, impartially. So he can be appointed as a scrutinizer and that is mandatory. So he will carry out the proceedings, he will decide submit the report and the result will be published by the chairman. And it should also be posted on the company's website. So after voting ends, scrutinizer unblocks the votes in presence of witness and he prepares a report. He conducts he should have to count, right? He should have to count the votes cast in favor and against. Both he will count it separately and he should have to submit a report. The total of votes cast, how many persons who voted for the resolution, how many members voted against the resolution, and in which paper. Suppose the votes cast against is more than the votes in favor of. Then he should have to say the votes cast this is only majority and he will declare the report based on that. He will give the report and based on that the chairman declares the result. So whichever the votes is majority that will be rated. Suppose if it has to be passed as a special resolution, then only if it is there it can be passed. When the criteria is met, it can be passed as a special resolution. That is, votes cast in favor should be 3 times more than votes cast against. That we will be dealing with it today. So only then it can be passed as a special resolution. Then posting of result. So that result will be displayed on the company's website and e-voting agency website. So for the people to see what is the result. Then next concept, we saw voting by show of hands, voting by electronic means. Now you can also vote by poll. Now the chairman can, on his own behalf, he can demand a poll. He need not go through the process of voting by show of hands. Straight away he can conduct a poll. That is also done. Or if members give a specific request that to the chairman or in the meeting they give the request that poll should have to be taken. So then also the chairman can order the poll. So who can demand a poll? If who members who can demand the poll. If the company is having share capital, then 1/10 of the persons, 1/10 of the total voting power or holding shares with paid up value of 5 lakhs. So it is 1/10 of the total voting power, or they should have to hold the shares to the extent of 5 lakhs. Paid up value of 5 lakhs. For any other company, it could be a company not having a share capital, then it is simply 1/10 of the voting power. they can demand a poll. So meaning a person's put together, they have the paid up capital of 5 lakhs. Then they can join together and they can demand a poll. That is possible. See, role of chairman and scrutinizer, I will tell you. See, chairman is the person who's appointed. A scrutinizer is some third person. See, chairman, he can be the chairman of the meeting. See, the members among themselves can vote a person to be a chairman. A scrutinizer, see, what do you mean by scrutinizer? Scrutiny. What do you mean by scrutiny? Scrutiny means he is just checking whether it is correct or wrong. Scrutiny assessment or scrutiny, we call it as you just check whether it is done in a fair process or not. He is not in any way connected with the company. He should not be connected with the company. He should be an independent person. Whereas chairman need not be. He could be a member. He can be appointed as a chairman in a meeting and he can go through the procedure. But scrutinizer, that he will be appointed only if it is necessary. So he should be definitely a person of repute, CSCA or CMA with that qualification or an advocate who knows the process and he counts the votes. See, I cannot, if I'm there in the thing. So, who will do the counting? It will be done by a third person. That third person in a company is called as the scrutinizer because it is done legally. He should have to count the votes and he should have to give the report. So, what we do is that we collect the, as if I act as a scrutinizer, what I will do is that I will collect all the papers. See, if it is a poll, it will not be open. Even the chairman will not know who has cast the vote in favor or against. He will not know. So generally, the option will be given to the person. In case of, say, postal ballot, he should have to say how many shares he is holding and in what favor he is voting in favor of the resolution or against the resolution. So that we will get it from each member. So that will be counted by the scrutinizer. His duty is only to see that, okay, this is counted. He is voted in favor. He has voted against. So you should have to total, if you act as a scrutinizer, then what is the votes cast? Suppose there are 100 votes cast in favor. Then 20 votes cast against. So the scrutinizer will say it is deemed to have been, the resolution has been passed. So he will give a report. So this is the voting in favor is so much, voting against is so much. So it can be declared that it is the resolution has been passed. So that is the duty of the scrutinizer. He analyzes, he does the process in a fair and transparent way, and he gives the report to the chairman. The chairman, on seeing the report, he will only declare the result and he will publish it in the website of the company. So that is the concept. Even in postal ballot, a scrutinizer is mandatorily appointed. Even there could be one scrutinizer or more than one scrutinizer. So they will be appointed and they will act in a fair and transparent way. See, this is a business, right? Even if so many members are there, they are acting, voting against or voting in favor of the resolution. So that should be done by a responsible person. So that work is entrusted to a scrutinizer, but he should be an independent. He should not be a shareholder. He should not be connected in any way with the company. Suppose my brother is a shareholder, I cannot act as a scrutinizer. Or my relative is a CEO of that company. So I will give the result in favor of that company. So that is not possible. So only an independent person can act as a scrutinizer. That is the thing. When you can demand a poll, before or on declaration of the result of voting on a show of hands. So even if the result has been declared by show of hands, on the declaration of the result, then the next better way is going in for a poll. So this is very important. See, this point is important. When to demand a poll, they can ask you in a short question also. Either they can ask you an MCQ or on a descriptive answer. So it can be before the declaration of result or on the declaration of the result by voting on show of hands. So then poll can be demanded. When you should have to take a poll, suppose there are two agenda. For those two agenda, you have to take the poll immediately. What are they? You call for adjournment of a meeting, or you are asking for appointment of a chairman. Then in those two cases, immediately a poll should have to be taken. In other cases, you can wait and within 48 hours of demand, you can you can take a poll. 48 hours of the demand also, you can take a poll. So that is possible. Then what is the procedure? The chairman appoints sufficient number of scrutinizers. When I say sufficient, when it is specified, you can appoint if one scrutinizer is sufficient, even one person is sufficient. Either one, minimum one, you should have to appoint, who should have to submit their report in MGT 30. So they submit their report in MGT 13 to the chairman for him to publish it. You can also withdraw the poll at any time. Suppose I, as a member, have demanded a poll. I can also withdraw it at any time. That is also possible. These provisions apply to private companies until their articles, unless their articles provide otherwise. Otherwise, it is also applicable to private companies, right? And what is the duty of the scrutinizer? If you say the duty of the scrutinizer, he should have to see to it the proper records are there. He should have to maintain proper records. And he should have to conduct properly the polling process. And he should have to submit the report, which shall contain the details of vote cast in favor and against. So that he should have to ensure compliance. If they ask you what are all the duties of scrutinizer, you have to write all these 4 points. Maintain records and proper conduct of the polling process. Submit a report to the chairman, and that statement should specify votes cast in favor of the resolution and against the resolution, and it is his duty to ensure compliance. So these 4 points you should have to make a note and you should have to write it. So when in law, if you write it, if they ask you the descriptive question, you should remember the points that you should have to write, that you should have to keep a summary, and you can do it that way. So what I used to do is that you can write it as a sum up session. So first one, now you have read a point. So duties of a scrutinizer. Try to recollect the points. 4 points you should have to write. What are they? So first one, we will say that maintain proper records. So the key word is proper records. So how you can elaborate it? Maintain proper records. Then proper conduct. So what is proper conduct of the polling process? So he should have to ensure. What is the verb? he should have to ensure. Then third one, report. So you have to submit the report. So is it simply a report, submit the report, you won't get marks. So you should have to specify that the statement should contain votes cast in favor of the resolution and votes cast against the resolution. Both he should have to give it in his report in the form of a statement. The details of that details he should have to give it. Then it is his duty why he is appointed. Mainly compliance purpose. So compliance. Ensure compliance. What complying with what? Complying, ensure compliance with the provisions of the act. If you don't remember the section, at least you can say ensure compliance with the provisions of the act. If you remember, you write it as section 109 and rules. Rules, or you can write it as ensure compliance with the rules and provisions of the act. So here the keywords are proper records, conduct of the proper conduct of the polling process, report, compliance. So these four are the keywords. So for any law paper, you should have to understand what are all the keywords that you should have to write in the answer. So the examiner will search those words in your answer. So proper records, that should be there. Then you should have to say proper conduct of the polling process. Then report, submit a report with the details. Then compliance. You have to identify what is tested, what the student should have to write, and then based on that you should have to write the points. This you should have to follow for each and every question, each and every point that we are discussing it. So what you can do once you go through this, you can sum up, you can have your own chart and you can prepare the chart. So once you today you have read it, then you can prepare your own chart and keep it. So that chart you should have to use it before the day of the examination or 2 days before the examination. So the day before the examination, so that you will find it easier to run through the points. Then, what is the manner of conducting the poll? So for that, the chairman appoints the scrutinizers, right? So will you just appoint the scrutinizer and what are the papers that you should have to give it to the scrutinizer? You have to give the register of members, then attendance register. Why attendance register? The attendance register will give you the persons who are personally present, who are present on that. Then for proxies, you have to give the proxy form also, register of proxies. That should also be maintained. So both you should have to give. The scrutinizer will check attendance register. Suppose Mr. A was not there. Suppose his proxy form is there, or then he can take that. If either in the attendance register also his name is not there or he has not appointed a proxy, but he has given a thing, then the scrutinizer will see whether is it given by mistake or he will cross check whether the persons who have demanded a poll or who have voted, their attendance they have physically present or they have appointed the proxy. For that, the chairman should have to give the register to the scrutinizer to verify it. And he distributes the polling papers to members and proxies present. So that he distributes it in the MGT 12. So that is the polling paper that he distributes it. And in case of joint holders, you will get a confusion. Who is a joint holder? Suppose A and B jointly hold the shares. They are called as joint holders. It could also be A, B, and C can hold the shares jointly. So always in the order in which they have given their name. Suppose A's name comes first, then B and C comes. A is called as the first named person in the joint shares. So first named holder. Generally, he will be given the preference. Only he can only do it. So joint holder attending in their absence, or if A is not there, then B or C can also attend. One of them can they can put their vote because they are holding only, that is treated as only one member, but they are holding it together. So only one of them can vote. So generally the polling paper is given to the first named holder. That is the concept. Then if members vote in person, then proxy is disregarded. What is this point? Mr. Yes has given appointed Mr. R as his proxy. After giving the appointment, after appointing R as the proxy, they have deposited the proxy form. Mr. S comes to the meeting physically. Then the question arises whether yes vote can be counted both physically and proxy. No. This proxy form is disregarded once he has come physically. What is the option when he is not able to come physically? He has an option to give proxy form. So he can appoint some other person on his behalf to attend the meeting, and the proxy has got certain rights. He cannot speak. He cannot vote in when show of hands is demanded, but he can vote on a poll. A proxy can vote on a poll. So when both the proxy and yes would have attended the meeting. So in this case, R and yes both attend the meeting. In that case, before R has cast the vote, yes, if he has cast, yes should have to cast this vote. So proxy's vote is not considered. That is the meaning. So if a member votes in person, any vote cast by their proxy is disregarded. That you should not count. So it will be duplicating, right? So for that reason, the logic is that only if a member vote in person, only the person in-person vote will be counted. Suppose he doesn't come, then proxy can vote on a poll. That is the concept. He should have to submit the report within 7 days, and based on that report, the chairman declares the result. Is this clear up to this? We shall proceed further. Postal ballot. So what is a postal ballot? Suppose I hold the share. If they want to transact a business, then it will be intimated to the members stating that the postal ballot, you can also vote through postal ballot because the registered office will be in some other state. See, I may be in Delhi, I may be voting for a registered office company in Mumbai. So in that case, I may not go physically. So in that case, postal ballot will be helpful. I can vote through the post. That is called as postal ballot. There are certain items wherein compulsorily those transactions should be done through postal ballot. What are they? This is a very important concept which one should have to understand. If I want to alter the memorandum or articles, I can also give you a situation, alteration of memorandum of articles and memorandum of association, memorandum of association and articles of association. What is a memorandum? Which contains the 6 clauses. When I want to change the name of the company from a private limited to public limited, or I want to change the name ABC to PQR, That requires alteration of memorandum. So they have specified private company or object clause. Suppose I want to change my object clause. In that case, then also I should have to, it is an alteration of memorandum or articles of association. So in that case, because of the object clause getting changed, my name also getting changed. Suppose I am doing a cement business. So ABC Cements is my name of the company. Now I want to do a mobile business. So ABC Mobiles, I want to change. My object gets changed. So in that case, the object change results in change of the name of the company also in certain cases. So indirectly, that will also be the name of the company will also get changed. There. Alteration of article for private company status. So either you can insert a restrictive clause for a private company. You can have additional clauses also. They can restrict by their articles of association. They can impose additional restrictive clauses also. For a private limited company. Then you are changing the registered office outside the local limits of any city, town, or village. So in that case, I want to change my registered office to outside my limits. Then also postal ballot should have to be conducted. Then I have got the public funds, but I have not utilized the funds. And I want to change the object. Then also postal ballot is required. Then issue of shares with differential rights as to voting or dividend. So if you issue a differential voting, then also you have to exercise that transaction only by a postal ballot. Then variation in class of shares, debentures, or other securities. Then I have issued the shares. I want to buy back that share. So what is buyback of shares? See in that balance sheet on the liability side, say you have share capital 1 crore. Now I want to buy back the share. Say I want to buy back 10 lakhs. Of course, buyback restrictions are there. It should be 15%, 20%. So that restrictions you should have to comply with. Let us not go in detail. But if I want to buy back 10 lakh of my shares, then the share capital after this buyback will be 90 lakhs. So my liability of the company gets reduced because the company is buying back the shares. What is the effect? If there is a profit, previously it was shared by, say, if it is 10 lakh shares of rupee 10 each. So that you will have it as 1 crore. Right? Now I have bought back. So now the shares is 9 lakh shares of rupee 10 each. Now, if there is a profit, it will be shared. Previously, it was shared by 10 lakh shareholders. Now it is going to be shared by 9 lakh shareholders, right? That is the accounting effect. See, if you have an apple, there are 100 students in a class. I give 1,000 apples. So in that case, each one will get 10. Suppose I reduce it, only 50 students are there. then each one will get the double of that. So buyback of shares. So buyback of shares, it you reduce the liability of the company by buying back the shares. So that is the impact for that postal ballot should have to be got. And you can do it only by a postal ballot. Then small shareholders director. So you have a thing, a person who's holding deposit, so he can elect among himself to be a director. So those things you would have read or you will be reading. So you call him as a small shareholders director. Mandatorily, he can be appointed as a director. So for that also postal ballot. Suppose the company has assets, fixed assets on the asset side of the balance sheet. Now I want to dispose of either the whole of the undertaking or part of the undertaking. Majority of the undertaking I want to do it, sell it, or a portion of the undertaking. So the wording is sale of whole or substantially the whole of the undertaking. So if a company wants to do it, then it should have to be done only by postal ballot, meaning that you are getting the consent of all the shareholders who are there. They cannot say, I don't know what happened. I was not there physically in the meeting. So this company has done so that chances are avoided. So they are given an option to elect or cast their vote by postal ballot. That is the concept. Then the company wants to give loans. Here, 3 points you should have to write. Giving loans, extending guarantees, or providing security exceeding the limits. In that case, the board has certain powers. See, they have given certain power. They are given loan. They can borrow or they can give a security. They have got the power. Board has got the power over their limit. If you want to exercise, then shareholders approval has to be obtained. So giving loans or extending guarantees or providing security exceeding the limits specified under section 186. For that also postal ballot is essential. So these are the mandatory items. When I say mandatory, compulsorily, it should have to be done by postal ballot. No other option. So this is first point. Second, third, fourth, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You have to remember all these points and write it in the examination. Okay. Then. So first postal ballot, let us know what are all the resolutions for which postal ballot is compulsory. For whom it is applicable, what are all the provisions? So the provisions we will see. And it is mandatory for specific items, optional for others. See, these are mandatory items. The other things are optional. You can exercise it by postal ballot or you need not exercise it. Here there is an exception. Ordinary business. Ordinary business should not be done by postal ballot except ordinary business. So what is an ordinary business? We learned the other day consideration of accounts or adoption of accounts, balance sheet, director's report and auditor's report for a particular financial year. Then declaration of dividend, then appointment of directors or reappointment of directors, those retiring by rotation. Then fourth one, appointment of auditors and fixing of remuneration. So in all these cases, these four are the ordinary business. For this, you should have to do it only in a proper conducted general meeting, annual general meeting. So except ordinary business, that cannot be, these four business cannot be transacted by postal ballot. That is the meaning, except ordinary business. So others you can do it. Then exemptions. Suppose the company is a one-person company and companies of up to 200 members. Then they are exempted from using the postal ballot. They need not have this postal ballot. So when I use this postal ballot, I should have to draft that resolution. Explanatory statement should also attached, and I should give them the time for voting. So today I post, I should give them 30 days for them for voting. So 30 days time limit should have to be given to them. What are all the modes by which I can do it? I can send it by registered post. I can send it to the shareholders by speed post or in an email. Now, many companies follow only email. They don't, though the act specifies, they make use of this email. They don't send it by registered post or speed post. You will not get it because it is green revolution. So it is a waste of paper which is from trees. So we companies generally follow by registered email. If they send it by email, then they are deemed to have complied with the provisions or by courier. So these are the options that are available. Also, they can give it in a one in a vernacular paper and that is local newspaper and one in English newspaper. They should have to give the advertisement. Again, the scrutinizer will be there. Definitely, mandatorily, a scrutinizer should have to be appointed for the postal ballot because he should only count the votes and he should have to give his report. So, a scrutinizer mandatorily should have to be appointed and he should be an independent person, not in employment, not to be connected with the company in any way to ensure a fair process. So wherever the requisite majority is there, that resolution is deemed to have been passed. Either it could be, suppose I want to sell the undertaking. Majority says no. No is the majority. See, I am getting a postal ballot for sale of the undertaking. Majority says no, the company should not sell the undertaking. Then the resolution is passed against that. They cannot sell that. The shareholders' consent has not been obtained and the company cannot sell the undertaking. That is the meaning for that. Suppose the company has consented, majority says yes, then they can sell the undertaking. So there it will be passed as a special resolution. Or majority says it is that is the special majority is there, then you can pass that as a resolution for the sale of the undertaking. That is there. Then after receiving the ballot, postal ballot, that is the ballot means the paper, the scrutinizer should have to give the report within 7 days. He cannot take his sweet time. So within 7 days on receiving the last date for receiving the postal ballot, he should have to give his report. Based on that report, the chairman will declare. The resolution is deemed to be passed on the last date specified for receipt of ballots. So the last day, if they have mentioned it as 6th April, they are doing an EGM. So 6th April is the last date. Then that is the deemed date, the last date specified for the receipt of ballot. So that is the deemed date on which the resolution is passed. Now, is this clear? Shall we proceed further? Then, circulation of members' resolution. So whatever resolution has been passed, so they are given the right to propose the resolution. If they want to pass a resolution, they can also move that resolution. So while the board enjoys the primacy in setting the agenda of the meetings, the member are given a right under section 111 to propose a resolution for consideration at the general meeting. See, normally the notice will be given. But if the member wants to have a resolution being passed, then he can give. Then who can give it? So those procedure we will see what section 111 says. Can he do it in the last minute? No. So who can do it? How it can be done? So that we will see. If the company has a share capital, then members holding not less than 1/10 of the paid up share capital can propose a resolution. Or if in case of companies not having a share capital, then person holding not less than 1/10 of the total voting power, he can pass the resolution. So it is either 1/10 of the paid up share capital or voting power. They can request or propose a resolution. For that, what they should have to do? They should have to deposit that requisition, whatever they want to do it. For a resolution requiring notice, they should have to deposit it 6 weeks before the meeting. For other resolutions, 2 weeks before the meeting. See, there are certain resolutions which require notice. You have to attach a separate notice along with the resolution. That you call it as resolution requiring notice. For those resolutions, you have to deposit, if you as a member wants to propose a resolution, 6 weeks before the meeting, you should have to deposit that resolution. For normal cases, for other resolutions, it is enough if you deposit just 2 weeks before the meeting. That is enough. So the company should have to give the notice. See, if Mr. A has proposed a resolution, then the company should give the notice to other members also, no? So the company should give notice to others also that this person has proposed a resolution and they are intending that to be moved at a meeting. So their intention to move that resolution also in the ensuing annual general meeting. So that is there. The company is not bound to circulate any statement if the central government says the rights conferred are abused, say it is unnecessary or it is only for publicity or there is any defamatory, then the central government may restrict the company from circulating that statement. Then they should have to obey the central government order. And also they can specify, the central government can specify or direct that the cost which has been incurred by the company should be paid by the requisitionist. Whoever has requisitioned the proposition or that proposal, that he should have to bear the cost. If the company defaults in complying with this provision, that is provision of section 111, then the company and every officer is liable to a flat penalty of 25,000 rupees. The company and every officer of the company who is in default, is liable for a flat penalty. So the members' resolutions could be circulated. The rule is that it could be circulated. If the central government says prohibits, then the company is not bound to circulate it. Then it can also, central government can also order the cost to be borne by the requisitionist. And if the company or any officer fails to comply with the provisions, then both are liable for 25,000 rupees as penalty. Right? Then, then I was saying the president or the corporation, so they could hold the shares on behalf of the country, and they will not be able to attend the board meeting, or I'm sorry, the general meeting. So the president will hold the share for any a defense company, assume defense company. It is taken only by the government. So it will be represented by the president of the country or governor of a state. So they will not be able to attend in person in every AGM. So what they can do, they can appoint some other person on their behalf to attend the meeting personally. That person will have the same rights as though he is holding the shares. Same rights as though he is a member. This holds good for representation of the president and governors in section 112 and also representation of corporation in section 130. So we will see what the provision says. This is again a frequently neglected provision by the students. Representation of the president and governor. If the president or the governor is a member of the company, he may appoint such person to act as his representative at any meeting and shall be entitled to exercise the same rights and powers as if he were the member of the company. So if the president appoints Mr. A as his representative, then Mr. A, as though he holds the share, he has the same rights that could be exercised by him. That is the meaning. Now, what does section 113 say? 113 says representation of corporation at meeting of companies. If a body corporate is a member or a creditor, including a holder of debentures at the company, and that body corporate authorizes any other person as its representative, it cannot come and attend, right? So a body corporate, a company is a shareholder, then in that case, it can only act through its director, or it appoints, for argument's sake, it appoints Mr. A, the director of the company, to represent that body corporate. Then Mr. A can go and attend the meeting, and A can vote on as a representative, and he can do all the acts which he can do if he is a member of that. If he is an individual member of that company, whatever right he has, that can be exercised, though he is acting only in the representative capacity, representative of the body corporate, that member can write it, can exercise the right. So you call it as representation. So section 112 talks about in case of president or governor. Section 113 talks about body corporate. See, proxy cannot vote through show of hands. So there it will not be demanded. The general rule is that proxy cannot vote by show of hands. If exception is there, they would have specified there, except then it would have specified. You read that proxy provisions. He can exercise the same right. Yes, but specifically it has been specified that proxy cannot vote on a show of hands. What they will do, they will exercise the poll option in that case. Then he can exercise his vote. That will be done. Practically they don't follow their show of hands because they know very well that president or governor is a member. So the company will not exercise the show of hands. They will exercise the poll only. The chairman will decide by voting by poll. See, generally, I want to specify this provision. When you read a provision, some certain acts will start with notwithstanding. Any provisions or anything contained in or any provisions contained in section. I'm just giving you an example. Section 12 of the Act, if I say. Now, section 30 talks about this. Assume. Section 30 talks, notwithstanding any provisions contained in section 12 of the Act. Meaning, whatever provisions has been contained in 12, that is not applicable. Section 30 prevails over section 12. That you call it as non-obstante clause. Notwithstanding anything contained in section or in any other provisions of the Act. I need not even mention here in section. Notwithstanding any provisions contained in, notwithstanding anything contained in any other provisions of the Act, Companies Act, then this Act is supreme. So section 30 overrules all other provisions. That is the meaning. So it overrules all other provisions. In certain cases, you will find that subject to the provisions of section 30, then that means section 30 is prominent, it has got priority. Subject to that, whatever has not been specified in section 30, then this section will be applicable. Suppose in section 15, you have this subject to the provisions of section 30. Then that means section 30 will prevail. Whatever has been specified in section 30, that is applicable. If it is not specified in section 30, section 15 is applicable. So it is subject to the provisions contained in section 30 of the Companies Act. So, or it could be any act you read. These two differences you should have to know as a law student, company law student. So subject to, when you read the act, in one of the topics in Companies Act, you will find that notwithstanding anything contained. You will later on learn in interpretation of statutes, non-obstante clause. So this is the meaning there. So you should have to read the question carefully, which act prevails over the other section. That you should have to note it and you should have to read. Then, shall we proceed further? The next provision, resolutions. See, I can, as a shareholder, I want some resolution to be passed. Then you you bring it before the meeting, and it may be followed by the resolution, or the some other person should have to second it. So they will propose, the other one will second. Then they will pass that resolution. Then they will find out whether it is majority consent to it or not. So, what is the difference between motion and a resolution? See, if you read this, most matters come before a meeting by way of motion, recommending that the meeting may express approval or disapproval to take certain action, or something should have to be done in that case. Then it may result in a resolution, it may not result in a resolution. Suppose you have made a motion for adjournment of a meeting. You won't pass, the company will not pass any resolution. So there it is only a proposal. It will not be followed by the resolution. Where it is passed for the closure of discussion or adjournment, you can pass it as an ordinary resolution. Suppose you have asked for a particular, the company members have asked for a motion, or one person has come out with it, other person seconds it. Then you can pass it as an ordinary resolution, and you can treat it as having passed. That is also possible. So first you should have to give your intention, and then it will be taken as a resolution. Resolution means you are following it. So it was resolved that they will do it. Or it may go in between also. Both are possible. When I talk about resolution, there are two types of resolution in case of general meeting. One is ordinary resolution and the other one is special resolution. We specify that as an ordinary resolution, meaning a simple majority is enough. Ordinary resolution means a simple majority, meaning 51% or more favors the resolution. Then it is an ordinary resolution. If it is passed by the consent obtained by 51% or more of the person, then you call it as an ordinary resolution. So the votes cast in favor of the resolution should be more than the votes cast against the resolution. Votes cast in favor is greater than votes cast against the resolution. Then in that case, it is deemed that it has been passed by an ordinary resolution. But when you give a notice, this is passed in a general meeting. When I say general meeting, it could be passed in an annual general meeting or in an extraordinary general meeting. Ordinary business, special business is there. For a special business, it could be passed by a ordinary resolution, or it could be passed by a special resolution. So in that notice, you should have to specify that what is the nature of the resolution that the company is intended to pass. So we used to give it as to consider. Suppose the fifth agenda is this: to consider, and if thought fit, to pass the following resolution as an ordinary resolution. So I want to regularize the appointment of a director. The agenda is for regularization of appointment of a director. So you are making known, you are writing this one line no before this resolution resolved that you start that resolution. The draft also will be given in the notice. So before writing that, you are giving the intention. This is called as intention of the resolution. This is mandatory in case of every notice. Intention of the resolution. So this should be given. Suppose you are going to pass this resolution as a special resolution. To consider and if thought fit to pass the following resolution as a special resolution, then you should have to give the explanatory statement also. For any special business, explanatory statement is essential. Whether it is an ordinary resolution or a special resolution, since it forms part of a special business. Anything other than the four agenda, namely consideration of accounts, declaration of dividend, reappointment of directors, those retiring by rotation, or appointment of auditors, for all other agenda, the company should have to give an explanatory statement, right? So for this ordinary resolution and this special resolution, the company should have to give an explanatory statement specifying. It will specify in the explanatory statement, the company wants to appoint this additional director, Mr. Y was appointed as the additional director. The company in its AGM want to regularize the appointment as appointment of Mr. Y as a regular director, and hence this resolution is put forth before the members for their consent. None of the directors is interested in this resolution except Mr. Y, for whose appointment this resolution has been proposed before the members. So they will give it in the explanatory statement. Now for special resolution, that also they should have to give their intention. The company wants to sell or lease, or it wants to dispose of the property. For that, it should be moved as a special resolution. So the members' consent is obtained. And they should have to give the details. If it is a special resolution, they should have to specify. Because he is a layman, a member will not know the details. So for what purpose you, what is the logic behind it and why you are asking him, all the details will be given. For that, I would advise you to download a financial report and you will get to know how the company passes, any listed company better. You can download the report. It is transparent. It is available in the portal or in the internet. You can download it and you can go through how the resolutions are passed for your academic guidance. So a special resolution is one in which the votes cast in favor should be more than 3 times the votes cast against. Now I will see how many votes cast against the resolution. Suppose 5 votes are cast against the resolution. Then votes in favor should be 5 into 3 times. 15 votes should be in favor of resolution. That is the meaning. Not less than 3 times. Suppose I have 20 votes in favor of the resolution and 5 votes against the resolution. My votes is cast in favor is not less than 3 times the votes cast against the resolution. Suppose I have only 14 votes in favor of that resolution, then that resolution cannot be passed because it is less than 3 times the votes cast against the resolution. 15 accepted. So exactly on the margin, it is accepted. 20 safe. But if it is less than three times the votes cast against the resolution, that resolution is not, cannot be passed as a special resolution. That resolution cannot be passed in that meeting because your intention is to pass that as a special resolution. Certain resolutions can be passed only by a way of a special resolution. So is this clear? I'll give you a minute's time. Just go through this. So the intention to propose the resolution has, as a special resolution, has been duly specified in the notice. That is to consider and if thought fit. If you open the um, notice, you will find this resolution. You can download any notice. You will find that the paragraph starts with this. That is called as the intention of the resolution. That is mandatory for any company, private limited company, public limited company, listed company. For any company, they should have to mention what is the nature of the resolution, whether it is they are planning to pass that as an ordinary resolution or a special resolution. That they should have to mention it in the notice. Now, this is a question which is there in your material also. Go through this question. The annual general meeting of Superstar Bakers Limited was attended by 60 members. In respect of a particular business, the resolution was to be passed as a special resolution. So, how the story goes? 10 members voted against the resolution. So, what is my criteria? If 10 members voted against the resolution, I should have to have, see, 10 members voted against is 10. I want to have a minimum of 30 votes in favor of the resolution. That is the criteria. Read that question. Yes, 30 votes. So 10 members voted against the resolution, whereas 5 abstained from voting. The chairman of the meeting declared that the resolution was passed as a special resolution, whether the declaration is valid. So 10 members voted against the resolution. So minimum you require 30 members, 3 times of 10. So 30 members must vote. You ignore that 5 members. So totally how many members are there? Out of 60, less 5 members who did not vote and 10 members voted against the resolution. So totally 15 members. You exclude that. So 45 members deemed to have given their votes in favor of the resolution. Since the question is silent, so only 5 has abstained. So 5 members did not vote. So that means other 45 have voted in favor of the resolution. So since it exceeds 30, minimum you require 30. The number of persons who voted in favor of the resolution is more than the requirement. Namely, 30 is required, you have got 45 votes in favor. So the chairman can declare that resolution as a special resolution and it is deemed to have been passed. The action of the chairman is valid. See, when you get a question like that, see, the question is whether the declaration is valid. You have to give the declaration, therefore, you read this last paragraph. This you should have to write to get the marks. Because the question says it is not asking you the procedure or it is not asking you the demonstration. It is asking you whether the declaration is valid. So this is the question. ensure that you are answering this question by giving a comment. This conclusion should be there. Even if you have written other things, you will not get marks. So this is the valid point that you should have to write. This only answers the question. This answer is compulsorily you should have to write this answer. Therefore, the question is asked, or they would have given some comment or give your advice, they would have specified in that question. So in that case, you should have to give that conclusion or advice on the question. So you should have to write it separately as a concluding point. Only for that breakup of marks will be given. So this is important. You should have to read the question correctly. This holds good for any subject. What is the question? What you are writing. That you should have to ensure whether you have given the answers as required by the question. That you should have to go through it once. Now, shall we take a break and then we shall go for this resolutions requiring special notice? If you have doubts in this, you can just ask me. Or else we can take a break for 10 minutes and then we will proceed further. Okay. Okay. So, welcome after the break. We'll continue with resolutions requiring special notice. That is where you should have to give that special notice to the shareholders or to the members. So, special notice is required. Apart from that resolution, you should also give a notice stating that what for you are passing this resolution and the details, so that the members will be clear in their giving their consent. So you have for appointment or reappoint resolution for appointing an auditor other than the retiring auditor. Suppose Mr. X chartered accountant retires at the annual general meeting. Now, the company is going to appoint Mr. Y chartered accountant in place of X. Now, the rule is that generally the retiring auditor will be eligible for reappointment and you will reappoint Mr. X as the auditor for the next year also. Now, the company wants to reappoint some other person other than the retiring auditor. Then, in that case, you should have to give a special notice while passing that resolution. So, resolution for appointment of an auditor other than the retiring auditor at an annual general meeting. And if the company is saying that expressly, the retiring auditor will not be reappointed, will not be reappointed. You are passing an express resolution, providing expressly that the retiring auditor shall not be reappointed. So even in that case, you should have to give a special notice. Then the first 2 points talk about the auditor. The third point talks about removing a director. Suppose XYZ wants to remove a director, Mr. A. He holds office for, say, for a period of 3 years till 30/9/2028. So 25 you have appointed. Till 28 he holds office. Before that, a person wants to remove a director. That you call it as removal of director. So in that case also you should have to pass a special notice. This holds good even for MNC and thing. A person might be a director in both the holding company and subsidiary company. So in the holding company, he would have ceased to be a director. Then automatically you remove him from the subsidiary company also. So there you call it as a removal of director. Before the period of office, you remove him from the directorship automatically. Then. Now, the company is passing a resolution to appoint another person as a director in the same meeting. So, for that also, you should have to give the notice. So, you are going to appoint Mr. B in place of A. So the board is only removing the director. So it should have to give a notice to the shareholders why it is doing so. So auditors, directors. So first two talks about the auditor and the third and fourth resolution talks about the removal of the director and appointing another director in place of the removed director at the same meeting in which he is removed. One is removing the director and another is appointing the director. In that place, you are appointing another person as a director. So and articles may provide for additional matters. The Act provides, Section 115 of the Companies Act provides these 4 points. That is the concept. Then, what is the procedure that you should have to follow in case of special notice? Then you should have to give the intention of the company that a special notice is moved. Suppose the member wants to do it, the member wants to pass a resolution, then in that case, he must have held at least not less than 1% of the total voting power, or holding shares aggregate of sum not exceeding 5 lakh rupees has been paid up. So even in that case, he can move a resolution and he can give his intention, and that member should have at least 1% of voting power, not less than 1%, at least a minimum of 1% of voting power. The company in turn will give the notice to the other members, and it will also be published in the English and vernacular newspaper. We will now read this. Whereby any provision contained in this act or in the articles of the company. So AOA can specify or the act can specify any provision. Special notice is required for passing any resolution. Then the notice of the intention to move such resolution shall be given to the company by such number of members holding not less than 1% of the total voting power, or holding shares on which such aggregate sum not exceeding 5 lakh rupees has been paid up. So it should have been paid up. It should be filed in writing by members. That is, they should not give before 3 months, not earlier than 3 months. If 39 is the, or I will put it as 19 is my AGM, then they should have to give 3 months. So within this time, they should have to give, not before that, not earlier than 3 months. 4 months before the date of the AGM, if they give, that is not valid. Within 3 months before, they should have to give. 1 month before, valid. 2 months before, valid. So that is the thing. At least 14 days before. So they should have to give between 14 days before that, they should have to give 28 days, 30 days, maximum 90 days. It's allowed, not earlier than 3 months. So approximately 90 days. So not earlier than 3 months and not less than 14 days. So at least they should have to have 14 days, not at least 14 days. Before they should have to give this, exclusive of the day of the service and the day of the meeting. So that both are excluded. Both the days are excluded. Both days excluded. And the company should have to give the notice to the members at least 7 days before the meeting. Before the AGM, it should have to give the notice. If it is not practical, what the company does is that it will just advertise in the vernacular newspaper and in English newspaper and in the company's website. So this option is also there, which is carried out by the companies practically, because they would have already dispatched the notice. Then again, you should have to give it. So they follow this. Complaint should have to be done. So they comply it by, if it is not practical, then they will publish it in English and vernacular. So if this has been received from the member before dispatch of the notice, because you require 21 clear days. Assume you dispatch it before 30 days. Before that 30 days, if the person has given, they will include that also here and they will put it in the notice and they will dispatch it to the shareholders practically. No difficulty for the company. Suppose the company has dispatched the notice and then the shareholder has come, they have dispatched it even much before 45 days before the AGM itself, they have dispatched the notice. But 30 days before the meeting, the person is coming and giving this, filing this resolution. So in that case, the option available is they can publish it in the English or vernacular newspaper and company's website. That is only practically possible. Suppose a meeting is adjourned. Adjourned means you could not hold the meeting for want of quorum. So it is adjourned to the same day and time. Suppose the meeting has to be held on 1st September, Tuesday. This could not be held for quorum. Next Tuesday, they will hold the meeting. Adjourned meeting. So if you pass the resolution on say 8th September, that is at the adjourned meeting, it is deemed to have been passed only at the adjourned meeting. The resolutions are passed only at the adjourned meeting, that is on 8th only. That is only correct. You cannot say that original meeting is 2026. You cannot take that. Only at the adjourned meeting this resolution was passed. So this is the date of passing of the resolution. That is the concept. As per section 116, where a resolution is passed at an adjourned meeting of the company or the holders of any class of shares, it could be a preference shareholders meeting. So that is called as class meeting. Preference shareholders meeting. That you call it as a class meeting. Then the board of directors of a company or adjourned meeting of the board of directors. Board meeting is adjourned. Here it is a class meeting or company meeting. That is either it could be AGM or EGM. In these three cases, the resolution shall be treated as having been passed on the day it was actually passed and not on the earlier date. Yes, the date of the adjourned meeting is the date of the passing of the resolution. So this example you read, AGM due to be held on 1st August was adjourned to 8th August and two resolutions were passed on that date. So in this case, the two resolutions were deemed to be passed only on 8th. So on 8th August only. It is not on 1st August. It is only passed on 8th August. This is the adjourned meeting. Suppose the board can also adjourn it to a separate date on further date. It is need not be the next week, same day. If they pass the resolution there, that date will be considered. Suppose they pass this as this was adjourned. They don't keep the meeting on 8th. If they keep the meeting on 12th or 15th of or 16th of August, then in that case, you should have to consider that meeting as only on 16th of August. That is the concept, for which of course 3 days notice should have to be given for the adjourned meeting. For this, they need not give the notice because the next day automatically adjournment means no special specific notice be given. If their board of directors determine on some other date, then they should have to intimate it to the shareholders on what day they are holding. Then On that date, if the resolution is passed, then you will take it as only 15th. Suppose it was adjourned to 16th August and you pass the resolution on 16th August. 16th August is the date of resolution. This is the adjournment meeting date, and that is the date on which board resolution dated 16th August. That is the date on which the resolution was passed. It could be for ordinary business, special business, ordinary resolution, special resolution, because the general meeting was adjourned. So it was passed on that particular date. From that date, 30 days time limit will be there for you to fill the form. Then, what are the resolutions and agreements that you should have to file it with the registrar? See, any special resolution that you pass, that should have to be filed with the registrar. So, ROC, you have to file it within 30 days of passing that resolution. What are the resolutions that you should have to file it with the registrar? All special resolutions passed. Special resolution means votes cast in favor is 3 times the votes cast against the resolution. So all special resolution where the intention is to move the resolution as a special resolution, those resolution other than the 4 business, ordinary business, any special business. For the special business, you have to file the resolution with the registrar in MGT 14. The clue is that whatever is the special business you are transacting, even in an EGM, whatever business you transact, that resolution also you have to file it with the registrar within 30 days in MGT 14. Then in AGM, other than the ordinary business, whatever is your special business, for that also you should have to file MGT 14. Any extra agenda comes other than the ordinary business, you have to file MGT 14 with the ROC. Then members' resolution. Resolutions which have been agreed to by all the members, but which, if not so agreed to, would have been effective for that purpose, unless they had been passed as a special resolution. See, they have intended that to be passed as a special resolution. It could be done as an ordinary resolution, but they wanted it to be a special resolution. So even in that case, you have to pass the resolution, whatever resolutions which has been passed by the members resolutions. In case of managing director, you are reappointing him as a managing director. Appointment means first time appointment. Correct? Appointing it for him for the first time. Mr. V has been appointed as the managing director for the first time. You call that as appointment. Now his term of office goes and you are reappointing him for a further period of 3 years. Then that you call it as reappointment. Or you are varying the terms of appointment. Suppose his remuneration is increased, then in that case, you are varying the terms of appointment. Or whatever has been specified in the explanatory statement, the terms will be specified in the explanatory statement at the time of appointment. Now you are not reappointment. During that tenure, you are varying the terms of appointment. Then even in that case, you should have to, it is a special resolution and you have to file it with the registrar in form MGT. Then resolution by specific classes of shareholders and if the company has moved for voluntary winding up under the insolvency code. So even in that case, that is a an item requiring special resolution, that also should have to be filed with the registrar in MGT 14. Then resolutions passed in pursuance of 179(3), we will be learning it now. You have to file form MGT 14 within 30 days of passing the resolution, and attachment is that you have to give an explanatory statement, notice, explanatory statement, what is the resolution that you are going to do, because the registrar should have to be given that basic details. So you will attach along with, this is the attachment of MGT 14. The attachments will be notice, what is the resolution you have passed, that extract of the resolution that you will attach, and also explanatory statement pertaining to this resolution. All the things should be attached along with MGT 14 with the registrar. Then this clause is not applicable in respect of a resolution passed to grant loans or give guarantee or provide security in respect of any banking company, or any NBFC company, non-banking financial company, NBFC company registered under the RBI Act. This is first one is a banking company or NBFC company registered under the RBI Act, or housing finance company registered under the National Housing Bank Act. So in these three cases, it acts as an exception. It is not applicable. All these exceptions are very important. A banking company, an NBFC company under the RBI Act, and housing finance company, NHBA, housing finance company. So these three companies are exempted, or it's not applicable. Nothing contained in this clause shall apply. So it's not applicable. They are not exempted. It is not at all applicable. Then, what is the penalty if the person defaults? The company and the officer and default, including the liquidator. Suppose the liquidator is also there, he is also liable to penalty. For a flat penalty, initial penalty of 10,000, and in case of continuing default, it is 100 per day. So this is a continuing default. These are the same. The only difference is in the maximum cap. For the company, it is 2 lakhs. For the individual, the officer and the liquidator, the maximum is 50,000. Whereas for the company, it is 2 lakhs. That is the only difference. Is this clear up to this? Shall we take the MCQs and then go through it? Or if you have any difficulty or doubts, you can ask me. Shall we proceed with MCQs? So, voting by electronic means is mandatory for every listed company and companies having not less than how many members? So, what are the different types of voting? We saw a quick recap. You have voting. So, voting by show of hands, voting by poll, voting by electronic means, and voting by postal ballot. These are the different types of voting. Now he is asking about electronic means. So I could see various answers coming. We will see. So many are able to give the answer. So listed company and companies having not less than 1,000 members. That is the answer. So rule 20, it specifies that every listed company and companies having not less than 1,000 members. So both should have to be satisfied. Then voting by electronic means is mandatory. Then a special resolution is proposed. 15 members voted in favor, 4 voted against, and 2 members holding 100 shares each abstain from voting. Is the resolution passed? Yes? No? So what is the rule? See, for any special resolution, the votes cast in favor should be 3 times the votes cast against. See, when do you call it as a special resolution? The rule is that votes cast in favor should be not less than 3 times, at least 3 times. 3 times the votes cast against the resolution. You are not bothered about those who did not vote. So those who did not vote are ignored. You don't take them into consideration. We are only concentrating on the members who cast their vote in favor of the resolution against the resolution. Only these two things we are bothered about. Now, in this case, 15 members vote in favor. Now, we are bothered about how many voted against. That is more important. So, voted against is equal to 4 members. Voted in favor. As per the Act, you require 4 into 3, that is 12 members should be minimum. This is the minimum number of members to have voted in favor. Only then the resolution is passed. Now, actual members who have voted in favor is 15 members. which is greater than the mandatory requirement of 2. So this is your requirement. This is the actual members who voted in favor. So this is more than this requirement. Then it is yes. Is the resolution passed? Yes. So then you have to say, so B and C will not come. You see the go through the answer. We are not bothered about the total members. We are bothered only about those who voted in favor of and in against. So this B is not an answer because abstentions are counted as voted against. When they do not vote, here the concept is those who did not vote, that you should have to take it as against. No, that is not a rule. So when you see A and D says that abstentions are excluding when calculating the votes cast. Yes, that is there. But is that because of that, is the resolution passed? No, it is not because of that. What is the criterion? The criterion is that the votes cast, this is the criterion. The votes, yes, because the answer is because 15 is more than 3 times the votes cast against. So 3 times 15 is more than 12. Because of that, the resolution is passed. So you have to analyze it this way. So D will not be the reason. D is not the reason, as abstentions are excluded. But is the resolution passed because of that reason? It is not that reason. See, the reasoning is wrong. See, that are excluded, no doubt. But is it because of that criterion you are passing this resolution? Is the resolution passed? Yes is the answer. You have passed the resolution. Why? The reasoning is because 15 is more than 3 times. This is only clear, no? Only then you pass that resolution. Are excluded. But when will you take it as the resolution passed? Only if you this criterion is met, that resolution is deemed to have been passed. Some have given D as the answer. No. D is also the answer. You can say, suppose if they have given, what are all the possibilities? They would have given A, B, then B, C, A, D, then A, B, or some various options are given as you expect that. Then if they have given A and D, yes, you can say both are valid point. But here is the resolution passed? Yes, because 15 is more than 3 times the votes cast. That is the criterion. So you should have to see when the resolution is passed. If they say true, then it is correct. D you can say that is true. The question is they are not asking true or false. The question is the resolution passed? Yes or no? Read the question. So it is yes is the answer. What is the reason? Then go to the reason. Which reason is better? Which reason is most appropriate? So this reason is not appropriate. Only this reason is appropriate. So the answer is A. So votes in favor to be 3 times the votes cast against. Abstentions are ignored in the votes cast. You are not excluding that. You are just ignoring it. See, you can also take a meaning here. It could be against the thing also. You are not at all considering. It's not excluded. But ignored. You are not at all considering. So you are ignoring. Right? We shall move to the next thing. Which of the following resolutions does not need to be filed with the registrar in Form MGT 14 under Section 170? A resolution to voluntarily wind up the company, a board resolution of a private company to borrow money under Section 179(3), a special resolution to change the name of the company, a resolution passed by all members, which, if not so agreed, would have required a special resolution. See, for third MCQ, see, read the question carefully. I think you have not read the question carefully. Not need to be filed, meaning you need not file the resolution with the registrar. There is no requirement. Read it again because you have to read the provision carefully. See, let me take you to that slide. It is 117, right? Read this. Okay. Okay, I'll tell you the thing. See, for a private limited company, this is not applicable. This thing is not applicable. Many have given the D as the answer. It's not D. See, resolution for MGT 14, you have to file for the other things. For borrowing money, you need not file that resolution. It is specifically applicable, not applicable to a private limited company to borrow money under section 179(3). See, MGT 14, if you see, I think that point was mentioned. Okay. Somewhere it is private limited company, for that private limited company, it need not give this MGT 14. So resolution to voluntarily wind up the company, for that requires a special resolution, right? So when it requires a special resolution, then automatically you should have to file. See, for any company, if it is a special resolution, this you have to, it is a special resolution or a special business, right? Then definitely you have to file. See, this is not an ordinary business. This is a special business. If you want to voluntarily wind up the company, even when you want to change the name of the company, that is also a special business. And you have to file the resolution with the ROC. Then any resolution would have required a special resolution, passed by all members. So this is also a special resolution. Only this, if you see, this is a board resolution. Why should you give a board resolution to the registrar? That is not necessary, no? So the keyword here is board resolution. See, do you file for a board resolution with the registrar? You file the documents only when it comes to the public notice. The public are involved, the members are involved, then you pass a resolution, ordinary resolution, special resolution, then you have to file MGT 14. For board resolution, do you file that resolution copy with the registrar? And that too, the thing given is to borrow money of a private company to borrow money. So this is the odd man out. So here it's very clear you need not file the board resolution with the registrar of companies. Is that clear? Read the question. He is saying a board resolution of a private company. See, what is a board resolution? They pass the resolution in the board meeting. Board resolution means they pass the resolution in the board meeting. So that meeting resolution you generally don't file it. You file only the general meeting resolution. Of course, to borrow money, you don't do it. If it is for allotment of shares or other things for a private company, then they file it. But only when the allotment is done. But do you, for borrowing money by a private limited company when board resolution is passed, it's not required. So which of the following resolutions does not need to be filed with the registrar? Read that once again and then you will understand. It is a board resolution. Under the exemption notification, all private companies are exempt from filing board resolutions passed under section 179.3. Specific exemption is there by the exemption notification. So, moreover, that is a clue for you, board resolution. Then, under section 108, voting by electronic means is not mandatory for which of the following companies? Not mandatory. Not mandatory means need not be. For the others, it is a must. When they say not mandatory, except, or I can even give the question, it is mandatory for the following companies except. I can write under, I can even frame this question under section 108, voting by electronic means is mandatory for the following companies except, either I can take this as the MCQ, or I can reframe the question under section 108. Voting by electronic means is not mandatory for which of the following company? So many have come out with the correct answer because it is not applicable to a Nidhi company. For what is the rule for a listed company? And if the shareholders are, if it has more than, not less than 1,000 members, it is mandatory. So here also it is mandatory. Here also it is mandatory. A company with a turnover of 1,200 members, so more than 1,000. Nidhi company is specifically exempted. So it is not mandatory for a Nidhi company. So Rule 20 exempts Nidhi companies and companies with less than 1,000 members from mandatory e-voting. Suppose if they ask you in a descriptive question for 2 marks, you should have to specify that it is exempted from for Nidhi companies and companies with less than 1,000 members from mandatory e-voting. You have to write both the answers. Then a poll is demanded on a resolution for the adjournment of a meeting. According to section 109, when must this poll be taken? Within 48 hours of the demand, at the discretion of the chairman, immediately, within 24 hours of the demand. I get mixed answers. See, this is for adjournment of a meeting, right? You are asking for an adjournment of a meeting. When must this poll be taken? You want to adjourn the meeting. There are two agendas connected with it. What are they? One is adjournment of meeting and the other one. In both the cases, yes. For appointment of chairman and adjournment of a meeting, it should be done immediately, not within 48 hours of the demand. Say, I will go to that slide. This is for poll, right? Time for taking poll. For others, immediate for adjournment of the meeting. Read this time taken for this particular thing. What is the time? Immediate and others. for the adjournment of the meeting or appointment of the chairman, you have to take it immediately for the poll. When it is demanded, you should have to take it immediately. Other than these two, you can take it within 48 hours of the demand. So uh, both starts with A. Either some way or the other, you should have to remember that adjournment of meeting. See, the meeting stands adjourned to some other day. So there also you should have to take immediate poll. What is the meaning for that? That cannot wait for 48 hours. So you are taking it immediately. Immediately you should have to take it on board. Or you want to appoint some other person, you want to appoint a chairman, that poll also should have to be taken. See, the person's members present among themselves, they want to elect one among themselves to be the chairman. For that also you should have to take the poll immediately. And when you want to adjourn the meeting, for that also you have to take the poll immediately. In other cases, you can wait, you can take within 48 hours of the demand. So immediate, these two things, you should have to remember that carefully. Read section 109. So adjournment of meeting or appointment of chairman. In both the cases, you should have to take it immediately. That is the concept. So let me write it here. It is immediate. Poll immediate for two cases. First one, adjournment of the meeting. Meaning why it is immediate, it cannot wait. So you are doing it immediately. Second one, appointment of chairman. In these two cases, it is immediate. For other cases, other than these two, it is within 48 hours of demand. So the answer, now this question is, I can even change this to for the adjournment of the meeting. I can change it to a poll is demanded on a resolution for the appointment of chairman. According to section 109, when must this poll be taken? I can also change the question and ask, right? So in all the cases, C is the answer. Immediately it should have to be taken. So immediately the poll should have to be taken. States polls on adjournment or appointment of chairman must be taken immediately. Is this clear? Then, a company has 1,000 equity shares. 400 shares are held by central government. The central government appoints Mr. A to represent at the meeting. Under section 112, Mr. A is treated as a proxy only, deemed to be a member personally present for quorum and voting, allowed to vote but not counted for the quorum, required to submit a proxy form 48 hours in advance. Certain things are wrong. Even one of the student asked the doubts. Hope her doubt is clarified. So what happens here? Required to submit proxy form, there is no such provision. So this is ruled out. Treated as a proxy only, that is also wrong. Allowed to vote but not counted for quorum, deemed to be a member personally present for quorum and voting. So many have come out with the option. The answer is B. So he is deemed to be a member personally present for quorum and voting. So you were saying whether he is a proxy or not, he will be as per the proxy rules, it is there. But he is not submitting the proxy form. Proxy form, no, he is not submitting it. So he is only personally present and for quorum and voting. So he is a representative of the government. He is not a proxy of the government. He is a representing the government. So he is a representative. And similarly for corporation also, 112 talks about president or governor, correct? We will recollect it. 112 talks about president or governor of a state. Then 113 talks about body corporate. So it cannot personally come. It will ask a representative to attend the meeting. So for 112 and 113, yes, he is representing the government. He has that legal authority. Yes. No, no. Central government is not considered as a body corporate. 112 talks about in case it is the shares are held by central government. See, if it is a government company, so in that case, when do you call it as a government company? When the shares are held by the central government or partially by central government and partially by one or more state government. So you have that central government company rules, no? So it is held by central government. In this case, 400 shares are held by central government, not majority, but still the central government, it is represented by Mr. A. So they have asked Mr. A to represent the central government. So in that case, he is deemed to be a member personally present. See, section 113 talks about body corporate. Now, when body corporate is holding the shares, in that case, it will ask its representative, say for example, the director to go and attend the general meeting. So there he is acting as a representative of the body corporate. See section 112 with respect to president or governor. You remember that slide which talked about 112 and 113. See, this is representation at meetings. Here it is the president and the governors. Then representation of the corporation at the meeting of companies. So this was only tested in the MCQ. You have to go through this 112 and 113 in your material. Separate paragraph is given. So that paragraph you should have to go through it. There. In case of a postal ballot under section 110, if a resolution is passed, it is deemed to have been passed at the registered office on the day of the counting, or on a general meeting duly convened for that purpose, the date of dispatch of the notice, or end of the 30 period allowed for voting. This is also a tricky one. Yes, president and governor, yes, it includes central government. I get mixed answers for this. See, what is postal ballot? Do they pass the resolution physically also? See, postal ballot forms are there, and you also have the physical meeting also. It will be conducted on that day, no? What is the postal ballot rule? See, sent to all shareholders. Resolution, voting result, resolution is deemed pass at a general meeting if the requisite majority assents. See the voting result. See here the voting result. They have specified resolution is deemed passed at a general meeting if the requisite majority assents. After this postal ballot, you also hold the physical meeting, right? So you are holding that, keeping that postal ballot. In that postal ballot itself, they would have mentioned that the general meeting will be held, and as a to get the consent of the shareholders, they are also passing the resolution by postal ballot. In order to get every person should be given an opportunity for those who could not come physically, they can pass their resolution by postal ballot, right? So what should be the answer for this? Now you read the question. In the case of postal ballot under section 110, if a resolution is passed, it is deemed to have been passed at, is it the registered office on the day of counting or a general meeting duly convened for that purpose, date of dispatch of the notice, or the end of the 30-day period allowed for voting? See, it is general meeting duly convened for that purpose, no? You are passing that resolution physically, and you are also getting the results from the postal ballot. But the date of resolution is only the properly convened board meeting. See, it is only a procedure. Postal ballot is only a procedure. What for is this procedure followed? So that those who could not attend the meeting physically, they should have to submit the postal ballot forms before. You have to submit the postal ballot forms. And you also pass the resolution physically. See, I will take it up once again for this revision, this concept in the next class. Don't worry. Yes, see, it depends, but generally, when a physical meeting is held, that is the date on which a resolution is deemed to have been passed. A general meeting duly convened for that purpose. You are convening the general meeting. For those who could not come physically, they can make use of this postal ballot. It should also be given by passed by postal ballot. Definitely, you should have to send it to them. That is the mandatory requirement. For which of the following can a company not use a postal ballot? Not use a postal ballot. This postal ballot is not applicable. The other three, for the other three, postal ballot. For this particular answer, no postal ballot. If you have understood the provision, yes, you can give it. See, when postal ballot cannot be used, for an ordinary resolution, you don't use the postal ballot, right? See, only for ordinary resolution, postal ballot cannot be used. See, if it is an ordinary business, ordinary business, except ordinary business. So, what are the ordinary business? Consideration of accounts. Second one, declaration of dividend. Third one, reappointment of a director. Fourth one, appointment of auditor. So for election of a director, buyback of shares, definitely postal ballot should be there. Giving loans beyond the specified, giving loans, providing guarantees are um, giving loans, extending guarantees or providing securities. So it comes as a rhyming thing. So they have asked in that question only giving loans or providing guarantees. Then sale of whole or substantially the whole of the undertaking. This also should come. You should have to use postal ballot. Mandatory things wherein postal ballot is required. So the answer is only B. Election of a director that has not been specified in the mandatory requirement. For an election of director, that is an ordinary business. So postal ballot is, we don't use the postal ballot. Ordinary business or business where directors or auditors have right to be heard cannot be conducted by a postal ballot. That is the rule. So you should give them an opportunity of being heard. So directors or auditors have a right to be heard. So definitely you cannot conduct using postal ballot. Is this clear up to this? Yes, B is the correct answer. So in the next class, we will be learning minutes and other topics which we have not covered and doubt solving also. I will do it once again with the postal ballot and so that the doubts are clear. So shall we wind off for today? If you have doubts, you can post it here. Yes, thank you all. And we will conclude for the day and we will meet in the next class. Yes, thank you all. Sridhar, Mujahid, Dhanlakshmi, Kashish, everyone. Thank you all. And yes, thank you.